everyone, I'm Claudia, part of the Support Driven team. As we gear up for Support Driven Expo 2025, we're launching a series to spotlight some of the amazing speakers who will be joining us. These short videos are a way to get to know the voices behind the sessions, what they're excited to share, and why you don't want to miss their talk. We're thrilled about the energy and insights they're bringing to the table, and we're still welcoming more of you to be part of this journey. So whether you're speaking, attending, or still thinking about it, we hope to see you at Expo. This first time, we're speaking with Adam Boelke. So yeah, feel free to watch this content and let us know what you think.
Background and journey in the world of customer support. Okay, so I started on the phones myself, working in the travel industry and taking
Okay.
after-hour calls and emergency calls from corporate clients from about 3,000 different travel agencies worldwide. And whenever
Okay.
corporate travel, it was all corporate travel. Whenever they were stuck in New York and they had a snowstorm and they needed to get out, or any kind of change in their itineraries, they would call us and we'd help out when their travel agency was not available. And I learned early on, kind of the value of creating a consistent brand message with, our customers and our corporate clients. But that was 30 something years ago. I was doing that while I was going to music school. I went to Berkeley
Oh,
College.
nice.
I was studying to be a songwriter. But since then, after I kind of went through the beginning parts of becoming a new supervisor, not having training like so many people do. I was a
Yeah.
good agent, but then I moved into a supervisor role with no training. And then over the course of the years, you build up additional kind of skills based off of trial and error. You find out what works and what doesn't work. But I went from there into the BPO space and started working for large corporations or providing services for large corporations, including technical support. And then I went into kind of providing in-house operations for Fortune 500 type companies like MCI back in the day. Now
Okay.
it's Verizon, but MCI, whenever you needed to dial the operator to make an international call or to even look up somebody's phone number or get their address or any of the general kind of services, you had to deal with an operator. You had about better than 50% chance of reaching one of my centers in when you called the operator. And then went from there over into American Water, which is the largest water and wastewater utility in the United States, and consolidated all of their different customer service departments that they had in each of the different states that they had across the United States. And we put them into one consolidated shared services center, and then dealt with all the customer facing issues, right? Anything related to customer service or billing or collections or, even field dispatching. We did all that kind of from our centralized location. And then they asked
Okay.
me to take over the non-regulated side, which was a new venture they were trying, which was a startup. And it was a warranty company that they wanted to do. And it was really just initially just to cover the water line and the sewer line that homeowners own on their property, provide repair services for that as a warranty company. But we grew that very quickly, to become the second largest in the United States within less than 8 years, actually. So it was a really fast growth and very large growth. And with that, we had to acquire contracts with all of these contracting companies that could provide and do the work for us. And so we really had a lot of win-win agreements so that as they got better at what they did, the more we got better as a company. So it was really a lot of partnership and a lot of discussion there. And then about 7, 8 years ago, I started my own company and I do consulting now based off of
Oh,
all
nice.
that experience and with my team here. And what we specialize in is three things. One of them is culture, because I learned a long time ago, having built 10 different call centers across 3 different continents and managing more than that. You learn that it doesn't matter what technology you have, it doesn't matter what processes you have. You could have the best on the planet, but unless your people are engaged and they really understand how they connect to the bigger purpose and the success of the company, it doesn't matter what you put in front of them, right? It's the
Yeah.
people that's always going to make the difference.
Mhm.
So I've really leaned heavily on into culture and employee engagement over the last few years, and I've created my own course called the C's to Success, which is based off of the 7 key principal areas that you need to build engagement around in order to create an effective culture of engagement that drives performance. So I just came out with my own course back in January, and it's now available to everyone as an online course. And it's not just a like leadership skills training, it's actually implementable strategies and philosophies and mindset on how you can actually create that kind of engagement that drives top quartile performance in any company, in any industry, in any size leader, right? You could be a startup leader that just took over the new team like I did when I first started in the company,
Yes.
uh, and needed some guidance on how to do this. This is the great way to take my decades of experience and turning it into days of learning, and then you can apply
That's
that, and now you
amazing.
same
Yeah.
same success. So but it's also great for top line leaders. I call it that's what this course actually or this talk
Yeah.
is about. Because the talk is about something that I've seen and witnessed over many decades of doing this with large project initiatives and IT initiatives. Is that there's a missing last mile that is super obvious. It's always there. We just typically never think about it when we're putting in large programs. That's what the talk is about. And that the other two things that my company works with other companies and leaders on is how to create call center optimization, how to get the most efficiency you can, the top performance out of that at, of course, the lowest cost. The last piece is around customer loyalty and how to build that and how to create the customer experience using the customer effort. I was lucky enough to be trained by the people that wrote the book, The Effortless
Mhm.
Experience, before
Oh,
they even came out with the book. So
that's
it
great.
was really a great opportunity, and I've been using that ever since in all my operations, and we've had just spectacular results with that. So that's the third branch of the areas that I work in.
That's amazing. I love how everything connects and it makes all the sense in the world because I love that you started from the beginning, like dealing with someone that is stressed, like in a situation that they need help, and that you know how they treat the operators and everything. You completely understand how everything reflects in the people that works in there, in the
Yeah,
culture, in do they have an onboarding or not? How can they deal with every situation? And now that you're in consulting, it makes all the sense in the world. It's amazing that you created all of this and the course. It looks amazing. I'm going to take a look at that
thank you.
because
Yes,
it's really
very
interesting.
proud
And
of it.
in the end, we could be at the other part of the world.
Yeah,
And it's the same principle. Everything depends on the people and how do you keep optimizing things? Because it's amazing for me that sometimes we think that a process it's only to set in stone something, but you need to keep changing this because people changes and situation changes, so you need to keep
yeah,
moving and optimizing
yeah.
as you were saying. The title of your talk in Expo is Unlocking the Missing Last Mile in Your Customer Experience Strategy. In there you shared with us that up to 70% of the customer experience initiatives fail to realize their full potential, so that
Yeah.
was really shocking for me because it's a really big percentage. Could you
I
tell us a
know.
little bit more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's I think what the talk is really about is I'm using a real life example of a customer journey through basic inquiry
Mm-hmm.
and sharing with the participants how, as all of us are rewarded and recognized for doing a good job, is we find out there's some problem in an experience that a customer has, and then we see some of the failure points in that journey, and we start working on fixing it, right? And we start doing the work, and we get rewarded when we complete the work on time and under budget, right? Or even within,
Yeah.
hey, good job, right? But the reality is that may not be the actual bottom line reason for why the experience is actually having a problem. And
Okay.
so what I'm sharing in this, and it's a big ROI problem, right? Because AI is a good example. Everyone's doing AI right now, right?
Yeah.
But there's a good way to do that, and there's a challenging way to do that. And unfortunately, how you handle that AI initiative and that project, because it's a big project, right? And you have to get a lot of people involved in that, but that can have long-term effects on your culture for years to come if you don't handle
Yeah.
it well.
Yeah.
But if you
Agree.
do handle it well, it's a galvanizing opportunity for your culture. It can
Of
now
course.
say, everybody and all the employees can be, hey, look what we did.
Yeah,
We
it's
just
a game
went through
changer.
the fire together, and look what we accomplished. So there's two ways to do it, and it's very important to do it the right way and to think through that part of it. So that's what I'm going to share with the participants is how to. There's four steps basically to doing that the right way, and there's seven principles that are necessary to kind of make sure that you've got activity in each of those and you're a thoughtful strategy in each of those in order to create that kind of environment, in order to galvanize that culture. And so that's what I'm going to be working on is sharing what I know about and what I've seen of
Yeah.
the times that we're not realizing the full ROI in these investment strategies we put in place, like AI or any other technical, new system we put in place, or even new process. When you start one of those, you always look for, well, what are we going to get on the back end of that? What's the result of that? How are we going to improve our company? What's the measurable result? And many times companies don't get that measurable result. And this is going to explain why they're not getting it. And it's going to help them be able to achieve the full potential of those initiatives going forward.
And it's going to be really intense, but I think it's really useful to have an example because in the end, we need to learn by that, like what
Yeah.
works, what doesn't work, and to be proactive, but while being proactive to implement this, how to do it correctly. So this sounds amazing. I believe that this is your second time at Expo, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Okay, great. And how was your
Last,
experience? I
yeah,
mean, for
last year
someone
was
who hasn't been there. Yeah.
Yeah, I almost think it's a misnomer to call it an expo because what I
Okay.
found it to be was really because when I think of expo, I think of lots of vendors and people trying to sell you and, all the
Yeah.
different exposure of that stuff. What I like about the support-driven community and what I really liked about that, what I call a symposium, the
Okay.
support-driven symposium, because it really is. It's actually at the University of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Um, you go into classrooms, right, to learn each of these speeches, or you're going to hear each of these speeches or their talks, and you're learning. People are sharing their best practice. They're sharing their
Mhm.
experience on how to help each other, and it really is a great community. And that was really the vibe last year when I was there. Was that all of us deal with the same type of issues. We all have different industries and different ideas that
Yeah.
teams that we're working with, but we all, just like the seven C's and that leadership uh, approach, we're all people, right? We're all
Yeah, of
dealing with
course. It's the
teams,
same
and
principle. Yeah.
yeah, and all of these are, even in your master's degree, you're
Yeah, of
learning,
course.
right? That there's a lot of consistency between all of us, and that's why I call it a symposium. And I mentioned that last year. I'm like, this really is a learning opportunity. This is a symposium and learning best practices, learning from each other and sharing. And I just thought it was such a great event because it's very unique. It's not something you see in a lot of other events.
It's the community part of support driven.
Yeah,
Because in the end, as you were saying, we come from different places, different countries, different areas of work. But in the end, we
yeah.
deal with people and we also have the same challenges. And that's why I love that we have tracks. Because as you know, that everything is trying to make sense of AI and how to implement it and management and customer experience and everything. So this is really great. And
The other thing I'll say about the expo that was a
yeah,
great takeaway also is you meet a lot of people. Your network expands substantially with
yes.
like-minded people, and I got exposed to some people I never would have met before had I not gone to the expo. Some of them have turned into long-standing relationships now that, we call each other or we, reach out to each other and try to support each other. So it's a great networking opportunity as well. And to learn that there's so many people in so many different positions in this industry, and we can all benefit from increasing that network.
That's the way. I mean, if someone else already learned from this, we should take all the experience possible and learn from it.
Yeah, it's kind of leapfrogging learning, right? So we can kind of avoid some of the pain of trial and
Yeah.
error. Just, do the right way. And I call it the pendulum effect. I see this with every supervisors that they go when they, especially if they get promoted from their team into now managing that team. I see
Okay.
this every time. It's like, they kind of, without training, right? They swing to one extreme and they start with, hey, will you do this for me? You're my buddy. I'll catch you later. Thanks so much. It's
Yeah.
really, all relationship based, right? And then there's that doesn't work for them because they find out that people,
Mm,
don't respond well to that,
of
and
course.
it's not as efficient. And then they swing to the other wall and they hit that wall, which is Mr. Hardass, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
do it because I told you to. I'm your supervisor, right? And that's the rules. And then they start learning that, it's really in the middle and it's around mission and engagement. And it takes people a lot of back and forth and hitting their head against each wall before they really find the center.
Yeah.
And what's nice about a course like this or any kind of learning environment like that is this is how we can kind of stay in the center without having to, hit those
Yeah, of
extremes.
course. And if we can learn from someone else instead of us hitting our heads between
Yeah,
those two walls, that would be even better.
right, right, exactly.
And just the last question, I was wondering if you could tell us how did you first get involved with the support-driven community?
That's a great question. Actually, I've only been a member of Support Driven a few years,
Okay.
and it was introduced to me by someone else. They referred me to the Support
Oh,
Driven community.
great.
And because they knew I was, getting into this type of work, and they really felt like, this is a great place to kind of, share ideas and to get people to, kind of be involved. My overall mission I changed last year to help make the world a better place to work because at the end of the day, and it helps all of us. It helps the
Mm-hmm.
employees because if it's a better place to work, they're going to have a more successful company, and it helps the companies because if their
Sure.
employees have a better place to work and they're more effective in their roles, then they're going to have a better company. So that's really my whole mission now, and that's why that's why I created the course was because before I was just doing this one client at a time in my consulting business, but I wanted more people to have access to
Yeah,
how to do this correctly and effectively, more leaders across the world. So, and I've learned people are people no matter where you are, no matter what
exactly.
country, no matter what age. Everybody's
Yeah,
really excited about the different labels we put on our different generations with the millennial, Gen X's, and all that stuff. And that's true. We have some preferences that are different. Our core things that drive us as people, we're evolutionary, creatures, right?
yeah,
That's been programmed in us for millions of years. I don't think it changed that much in the last 15 when we started putting labels on there.
yeah, exactly.
So the key is to focus on the things, those motivators and those drivers, not are we using a cell phone to talk now or are we using some other kind of channel.
Yeah,
So
of course.
it's something that is very unifying when you start looking at it that way, and it's definitely possible.
I'm excited for your talk, and I know that everyone that attends is going to learn a lot and hopefully apply it to their corresponding
Yeah.
works of play. So, as you were saying, we can improve on this.
Big
Yeah,
thing is just to, come in with that kind of approach or that kind of attitude of learning
exactly.
and sharing. And I think you're going to have a great expo.
Thank you again for your time and for giving us this exciting preview. We are really looking forward to your presentation at Expo.
Thank you so much for watching and getting to know one of our Expo speakers. There's so much more to come, and we can't wait to learn alongside this amazing community. Be sure to check out the full lineup on LinkedIn and during our community newsletter. We hope to see you there.